Arnold Schwarzenegger has always said he has millions of fans around the world, and it was one of those fans who unknowingly set off a chain of events that created one of Hollywood's biggest movies, and one of its strangest scandals. Everything began at a small family gathering, where Arnold saw a VHS tape of a French comedy called La Tête Ale, brought over by his brother-in-law, Bobby Shriver. Since Bobby was connected to Hollywood and part of the Kennedy family, and Arnold was married to Maria Shriver, JFK's niece, the movie was subtitled in English. The film told the story of a secret agent who pretends to be an ordinary husband, and Arnold immediately saw potential in it. He handed the tape to director James Cameron and suggested they remake it. Bobby later became one of the producers. That simple family movie night led to the creation of True Lies, a massive $378 million blockbuster. When James Cameron watched La Tête Ale, he saw more than just a comedy. He saw a story about secrets, identity, and marriage, and imagined it on a grand scale filled with action and explosions. He bought the remake rights for just $1 symbolic, making sure Claude Zidi, the original director, would still receive a share of future profits. It was a generous deal that later earned Zidi $15 million when True Lies became a hit. Cameron, already famous for Terminator 2, turned the quiet French story into an enormous spectacle with Harrier jets, massive explosions, and some of the most advanced effects of the time. The budget climbed to $115 million, the most expensive movie ever made at that point. But the film's history wasn't without controversy. Years later, in 2000, a French screenwriter named Luc Lambert claimed La Tête Ale had actually stolen its idea from his 1981 script called Emily Lee. His case was dismissed at first, but in 2004 he won on appeal after actress Sylvie Joly testified that she had seen Lambert's script in 1982. The court ruled that La Tête Ale, and therefore True Lies, had indeed used his story without credit. Zidi had to pay Lambert a portion of his profits, while Cameron was cleared since he had bought the rights in good faith, not knowing about the plagiarism. Casting True Lies was just as dramatic. James Cameron wanted someone unique for the female lead, Helen Tasker, the wife who discovers her husband's secret life. He chose Jamie Lee Curtis because she had the right mix of humor, intelligence, and confidence. She had impressed him in A Fish Called Wanda and Trading Places, even though most people knew her as a scream queen from horror movies like Halloween. Arnold wasn't sure at first that Curtis could handle such a big role, but Cameron insisted. Once filming began, Arnold quickly changed his mind. Curtis's performance stunned everyone, and Arnold even did something rare for a Hollywood superstar. He shared top billing with her on posters and credits. Curtis later said his decision was an act of true generosity and respect. Meanwhile, Tom Arnold, who had just gone through a messy divorce from Roseanne Barr, was desperate to rebuild his career. When he heard about True Lies, he auditioned mainly to meet Cameron and Schwarzenegger. Studio executives at 20th Century Fox didn't want him. They thought he was a distraction and bad publicity. But Cameron refused to back down. He told the studio that if they didn't approve Tom Arnold, he would take the entire project, worth over $100 million, to another studio. Fox eventually gave in, and Cameron's gamble worked. Tom Arnold's comic timing made his character, Gib, one of the movie's highlights, reviving his career and changing public opinion about him. The production of True Lies was intense. It was filmed over 7 months, from August 1993 to March 1994, with long days and few breaks. Cameron's perfectionism was legendary. He paid $20,000 per hour to rent real Harrier jump jets from the military and even built a life-sized replica for close-up shots. He spent extra money on minor digital adjustments, like changing a shirt color or moving a camera angle. The movie ended up making $378.9 million worldwide, including $146 million in the US. It became a record breaker and was even the highest-grossing Hollywood film ever released in China at the time. Still, because of its enormous budget, its profit margins were smaller than other hits like The Lion King. When asked about the cost, Cameron famously said, "The money is up there on the screen." That attention to detail also helped launch his visual effects company, Digital Domain, which he co-founded with Stan Winston and Scott Ross. True Lies was their first major project, and their success on it made the company one of the top names in Hollywood, later responsible for Titanic, Avatar, and hundreds of other films. The movie also broke ground in another way. It was the first film ever to officially cost more than $100 million. That figure shocked Hollywood in 1994, but Cameron later beat his own record several times with Titanic and Avatar. One of the most famous scenes in True Lies is the striptease sequence featuring Jamie Lee Curtis. For years, people believed her fall in that scene was a real accident. But the truth came out later. It was carefully planned by Curtis and Cameron. The scene was meant to show vulnerability, humor, and tension all at once. Curtis brought her own lingerie from home and choreographed her own movements. Cameron initially wanted the scene darker and more revealing, but Curtis suggested keeping it playful and grounded instead. She performed the dance to Alone in the Dark by John Hyatt, filming over 3 days. The fall that made audiences laugh wasn't an accident at all. It was their clever trick to lighten the moment and keep the scene from feeling too serious. Schwarzenegger didn't know it was planned, so his startled reaction when she fell was completely real. That authenticity made the moment unforgettable. Cameron even tried to reshoot the fall later, but it never felt the same. Once the element of surprise was gone, the magic disappeared. The original take stayed in the film and became one of the most memorable movie moments of the 1990s. Jamie Lee Curtis later said that while filming the scene, she noticed how quiet everyone on set became. The energy shifted from humor to something almost too intense. The fall, she said, saved the scene. It broke the tension and made everyone laugh again. When the movie premiered, the audience erupted in laughter during that moment. Curtis called it the biggest laugh of her entire career. But behind that laughter was a deeper story about art, risk, and honesty. Cameron's approach to filmmaking pushed his actors and crew to their limits, but he also knew when to trust their instincts. Curtis's fall worked because it was real, because Arnold's reaction was genuine and the audience could feel it. That was Cameron's secret. No matter how expensive or grand a movie was, the truth of human reaction mattered most. Years later, the plagiarism scandal resurfaced and cast a shadow over True Lies. The French court's ruling in favor of Luc Lambert didn't change the movie's success, but it did remind Hollywood how fragile creative ownership can be. Lambert's victory was described as a David versus Goliath moment, with the judge reminding filmmakers everywhere, when you buy a story, you must know where it truly came from. Even with that controversy, True Lies remains one of the defining action films of the 1990s. It mixed comedy, heart, and groundbreaking effects in a way few movies have matched since. It also marked a turning point for everyone involved, for Arnold Schwarzenegger as an actor who could mix humor with heroism, for Jamie Lee Curtis who proved her range, and for James Cameron who once again showed that when he dreams bigger than anyone else in Hollywood. Arnold Schwarzenegger's most challenging scene, however, wasn't a stunt at all. It was the tango dance sequence with Tia Carrere. In the script's margins, Cameron had written a note, "This is your most dangerous stunt." Arnold took that seriously. He trained for weeks to master the steps and rhythm. Carrere later joked that dancing with her was Arnold's most dangerous mission yet, but she praised his dedication and posture. The scene became one of the film's most elegant and iconic moments. Behind the camera, the risks were just as real. True Lies was the first film ever to cost over $100 million, though the actual budget ended up closer to $120 million. The massive production created constant danger. Explosions sometimes went wrong, and injuries were frequent. Crew members often worked in harsh conditions. One team spent hours standing waist-deep in water to get a shot right. Emergency medics were always on standby. Some stunt coordinators even had troubling pasts that raised safety concerns. Cameron's perfectionism drove the cast and crew to exhaustion, repeating dangerous takes until he was satisfied. The movie's realism came at a high physical and financial cost. After the movie earned nearly $379 million worldwide, Cameron began planning a sequel. In August 1999, he hired writer Jeff Easton, and by March 2001, the script was finished. The original cast was on board, and Cameron had just secured a $500 million production deal with Fox to create multiple films. True Lies 2 was at the top of the list. But then the September 11th attacks happened, and everything changed. Suddenly, a light-hearted spy comedy involving terrorism didn't feel appropriate anymore. Cameron immediately canceled the project. Schwarzenegger still believed they could adjust the story and make it work, but Cameron refused. "Terrorism is no longer something to joke about," he said. The script's major airplane battle scene, though not connected to terrorism, hit too close to home. Curtis agreed, later saying, "Terrorists aren't funny anymore. They never were, but we could pretend they were. Now we can't." The sequel died quietly. After September 11th, Hollywood's attitude toward terrorism-based films changed completely. Several projects were canceled or delayed. Collateral Damage, starring Schwarzenegger, was postponed for months. Jackie Chan's Nosebleed, which featured a plot about an attack on the World Trade Center, was scrapped entirely. Even Forrest Gump 2 and other unrelated films were shelved. Studios didn't want to risk making entertainment out of tragedy anymore. Still, the True Lies story refused to fade. In 2021, CBS tried to bring it back as a TV series starring Steve Howe and Ginger Gonzaga, with James Cameron returning as executive producer. It premiered in March 2023 but failed to connect with audiences. The show became CBS's lowest-rated scripted series of the season and was canceled after just 10 weeks. The finale ended on a cliffhanger that was never resolved, proving that the original movie's chemistry between Arnold, Curtis, and Tom Arnold could never be replicated. The film's legacy also carried controversy. Many Arab American groups protested True Lies for its portrayal of Arab villains. The fictional terrorist group Crimson Jihad sparked demonstrations in 10 U.S. cities and led to the movie being banned in over 50 countries. Critics accused Hollywood of replacing Cold War Russian villains with Muslim stereotypes. Protesters carried signs saying, "Hasta la vista, fairness," and "Terminate the lies." The Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee called it scapegoating, arguing the film offered no real motivation for its villains beyond prejudice. There was also backlash against the way the film handled relationships, particularly the scene where Arnold's character tricks his wife Helen into performing a striptease while secretly watching her. Critics said it wasn't funny but cruel, highlighting abusive power dynamics. Feminists pointed out how the film normalized manipulation in marriage and questioned why Helen stayed with her husband afterward. Roger Ebert even wrote that the scene felt mean-spirited rather than humorous. Jamie Lee Curtis defended the performance, saying she found it empowering. She performed it herself with no rehearsals and no choreographer, adding her own comedic fall to ease the tension. Some saw it as brave and liberating, others thought it reinforced the male gaze, focusing more on Harry's reaction than Helen's strength. Behind the scenes, Tom Arnold's personal life was falling apart. His marriage to Roseanne Barr was ending in chaos, filled with accusations of abuse and infidelity. She claimed he broke into her home and threatened their children, while tabloids covered their feud daily. During True Lies filming, he tried to joke about it on talk shows, even adding a line about his wife stealing his ice trays, a real reference to their breakup. But despite the drama, his career revival through the film was undeniable. In the end, True Lies remains both a cinematic triumph and a reflection of Hollywood's extremes, creative genius and ethical blindness, high art and deep flaws. It broke records, changed careers, and redefined action movies, but behind the glamour were secrets, pain, and lessons the industry is still learning today.